Hello, everyone. My name is Taarini. I am a high school senior at Irvington High School from Fremont, California. I am very excited to interview Dr. Panchanathan, who is a computer scientist and the 15th director of the U.S. National Science Foundation. Dr. Panchanathan, could I please request you to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Taarini. And first of all, thank you so much for doing this. It's really very impressive to see, somebody who is so passionate about education, learning, and the future of technology like yourself at such a young age doing this. And I'm very thrilled to be part of this interview. So my name is Sethuraman Panchanathan. I'm the 15th director of the National Science Foundation. And so glad to be with you today.
Thank you so much for the kind words, and it's an honor to interview you today. So starting with the basics, what are NSF's mission and purpose?
Yeah, so NSF, has been there for over 7 decades now, and it was founded in 1950. In 1945, a visionary person named Vannevar Bush, who, after the Second World War, said, how might we use science and technology for the purposes of advancing humanity and society, set forth Science, the Endless Frontier, as a paradigm of how to advance science and technology into the future. And so NSF was founded on those fundamental sort of outline that Vannevar Bush had put together of what it could be. And over the 7 decades, NSF's mission has been, how do we advance science in, science and technology and engineering and unleash the prosperity through that? And therefore, looking at specific areas like human health, national security, and economic and societal prosperity as the sort of the primary focus areas for science, engineering, technology to be able to contribute to, and therefore get challenged by also at the same time to move things into the future.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's honestly just great to see that the nation has such a foundation that's so focused on advancing research and STEM research in general. So I guess, how has NSF's role changed in the post-COVID world? Has NSF changed its strategy for funding healthcare research, especially with the ongoing pandemic?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There are several things that you learn, right? I mean, NSF has always been funding these 2 priorities. I call them the DNA of NSF. The DNA of NSF has 2 strands. One strand is what I call the curiosity-driven, discovery-based exploratory research. So the sheer curiosity that I want to know something and therefore explore and discover is something that's what you would call almost the what NSF is known for and what is unique about NSF's mission, right? And so if you look at the essential detection of gravitational waves is a good example of that, right? In the 1970s, it was postulated that gravitational waves existed through theories. In 1990s, for example, we built the instrumentation that essentially made possible the detection of gravitational waves in 2015. And that then led to further explorations like black holes and other kinds of things, but also in the development of quantum sensing and things of that nature that allows further technological breakthroughs and advancements into the future. The second strand, which interweaves with this strand, the first strand that I talked about, is what I called use-inspired, solutions-focused translational research or innovations. So even the example that I just cited, if you look at the fundamental core gravitational waves, it is an exploration or a curiosity-driven, discovery-based activity. Then the building of the instrumentation, you could call it as a translational activity. Again, that led to the discovery on the other side. So you can see that we're moving back and forth, that both explorations and innovations are happening at the same time. And that's the strength of NSF. Now to the question that you asked, therefore, these kinds of moments like COVID presents as an opportunity, as much as it is a challenge, it also provides opportunity to rethink and contribute in very significant ways. So the 7 decades of activity, whether it is in biology, whether it is in computing, whether it is in engineering, whether it is in social behavioral sciences and more, mathematical, physical sciences and more, what happens is those all now come to assist in terms of designing the solutions. Let's take 3D printing, for example. You are quite familiar with that, right? 3D printing of PPEs. Now, 3D printing started off as an additive manufacturing effort that NSF funded in the 80s, for example, and the 90s. And then that led to 3D printing. And now 3D printing is now used to address the challenge that we have before us. Okay? Or whether it is the CRISPR, technology that NSF funded Jennifer Doudna many decades ago, and then continue to fund her work. So all of these things do come to assist, and even the fact that the PCR test was based on a fundamental research that happened many decades ago that was funded by NSF, right? So these are the kinds of things that NSF makes happen. The projects then come to assist in terms of solving current day challenges like the pandemic, but it also sets the stage for future challenges that we must be prepared for and ready for, isn't it? So the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us how to be a lot more resilient. How can we be resilient to future pandemics? How can we be therefore resilient to natural hazards? How can we be resilient to economic disruptions, right? Or how can we be resilient to education disruptions? You are experiencing that firsthand, right? That is, face-to-face educational activities in 2 weeks had to flip and become all digital, right? And we have learned a lot through that process also, isn't it? But that challenge has also become an opportunity. Yes, we had a lot of challenges in terms of making that happen and making the infrastructure work, most importantly, making the learning outcomes work. But what did we learn from that? We learned that learning anywhere and everywhere at any time is possible, isn't it? So it then presents you new opportunities now. Now you can teach anybody anything anywhere, whether they are in a rural area or whether they are in a school which is in an area where we don't have the best possible infrastructure or even teachers for that matter. That you can still provide the highest quality educational opportunities and learning opportunities for people everywhere. So this promotes more inclusion of talent and ideas from all across the nation, rural, urban, all 50 states, right? All socioeconomic demographic, isn't it? So a challenge like COVID-19 pandemic now is now making possible unbelievable innovative thinking. It's spawning now unbelievable new activities for the future. At the same time, it's taking all the past discoveries, innovation, technologies, and bringing it to solving the current day challenge at the same time. We all know that the vaccines that came about in such a short time was made possible because of the intense effort by the funding that happened at the National Institute of Health, as well as other agencies like NSF, all coming together and making that unbelievable, on the ground innovations possible, and therefore addressing the pandemic at hand possible. So finally, put the final touch on this is, therefore, we will of course fund activities that are going to be focused on ensuring that we are resilient to future pandemics. No question about that. We will, in fact, work a lot more in partnerships. And that's something that I'm emphasizing a lot since I have taken this role, is how can we work in partnerships inside the agency? Because this pandemic is not, we have recognized, it's not just a biology problem or a biomedicine problem. It is a computing problem. It's an engineering problem. It's a social behavioral sciences problem and more. And therefore, how can we bring all of those inspirations at NSF together by breaking down any barriers or silos that may be there so that people can work across disciplines naturally? Also, partnerships with other agencies, NIH, for example, Department of Energy or NASA or National Institute of Science and Technology, okay, NOAA, and a whole lot of other partners. Then expanding further, working with industry. We know how important it is to work with industry. And then even more, something that you are very, very familiar with, working with the entrepreneurial ecosystem. How might we fund new innovations, companies that can then express their entrepreneurial ideas into ventures that can actually be very successful in addressing these problems and problems of the future. So we are going to be working much more through these learnings, as I have said, in many, many ways and forms. And NSF is engaged very actively and intentionally. I always say this, intentionality and intensity is both required at this moment to see how we can unleash prosperity for the future.
Wow, that was definitely a great answer. And it's great to see how COVID has really made us all more resilient, especially NSF, in terms of innovation and spurring new ideas. And I just think that's such a great answer and a very positive outlook on the current pandemic. Now, shifting gears to artificial intelligence and NSF, which aspects of AI are of top interest to the National Science Foundation?
That's again a very, very good question, Taarini. So being an AI researcher myself and having been a computing researcher, one thing that I want to draw attention to, AI of today is made possible because of sustained investments by NSF and other agencies and industry and others over the last several decades. It didn't just happen today. We celebrate it because we know the importance of AI and what it can do for humanity, society, economy, and more. Okay, so therefore, those investments over several decades have now resulted in the AI of today. And therefore, we need to invest in continuing fundamental research in AI, right? All the aspects of AI, whether it is software, theory, algorithms, new forms of architectures, new forms of systems that we need to build. All of these have to be invested in, no question about that. At the same time, we also make sure that we invest in those applications that AI can make possible. For example, last year we invested in AI institutes across the nation, right? 7 of them. Believe it or not, 2 of them were funded by USDA and NIFA, National Institute of Food, right? So when you look at that, you see that how might AI now make possible future agriculture, smart agriculture? How might we do better in terms of our agriculture outcomes, right? Innovations through agriculture. So 2 of those institutes were co-invested by USDA and NIFA. Now, at the same time, when we launched the current cycle of AI institutes, 11 more, the 18 of them, they are in fact spanning 40 states plus the District of Columbia, where AI is being, activities are being invested in, okay, through partnerships as well as NSF investments. Now, not only agriculture, you're looking at health. Okay, you're looking at so many learning, for example, advanced learning, and so these kinds of application domains are going to be increasingly impacted by investments in AI. So, core AI, the fundamental AI, which I talked about, as well as applications made possible by AI, and through those applications, you then learn things that we further need to go back and look at the core. Nothing is a given, isn't it? It's always that you look at it and see how you might do better by further exploring. And as I said with the DNA example, you always find how the application work inspires more curiosity-driven work. And that symbiotic nature is how we advance everything at NSF. Okay, what else? We have also learned over the years that when you're doing all of these things, there are many issues that needs to be brought to the front and addressed, okay, namely privacy, ethics, bias, okay, security, and a whole lot more of those issues have come about. But what do those things teach us? They teach us that we need to work a lot more closely with other disciplines, particularly the social behavioral sciences and humanities. So what we're doing with AI now is we're also partnering to see how we might bring these new solutions for these such challenges by not looking at it as after the fact. It is not you invent an AI algorithm or an AI technique, and then you bring these inspirations in, but instead you bring them a priori. That is, even before you design an algorithm, you now factor in all these inspirations so that we might design the right kinds of approaches that addresses these problems like privacy, security, bias, all of those issues that we face, right? So this is something that NSF is also investing in. In fact, our Fairness in AI initiative with Amazon is an excellent example. Here you again go and partner with companies like Amazon and then focus on these kinds of challenges as a mechanism of unleashing new innovations to address those challenges. Okay, so the AI institutes, the 18 of them, quite a few of them are funded by our partners. In fact, one of those AI institutes in the current iteration was made possible because of a partnership with Intel, Accenture, Google, and Amazon, right, at $20 million scale. So this is how we want to move forward, is partnership with other agencies, partnership with industry, while we want to advance certain things of AI that I outlined as the priorities, but we also want to do that in partnership so that we can have even more impact across the nation.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think it's just amazing to see US agencies really funding AI research. I mean, they have had a major contribution. NSF and other US agencies have had a huge contribution to the advancement of AI and what AI is today. So honestly, I think the AI industry is quite thankful to NSF and other agencies for supporting the advancement of that research specifically.
But we also are in turn thankful to all the companies, all the entrepreneurs, all the other agencies, because it takes a village, as they often say, right? The innovations that happen in companies are phenomenal, whether it is Google or Microsoft or Amazon or small companies, medium companies, all of these things, this is what makes it possible at the end of the day. So in turn, we are very grateful for that, right? When you talk about Google, for example, NSF in 1994 funded 2 graduate students, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, right, for the Digital Libraries project. In 1998, at the end of the project, they said that they were founding a company called Google, and you know where it is now, right? So likewise, Qualcomm was an SBIR project, a small business innovation research project of NSF, and now you see where the company is. So it is important that agencies like NSF, particularly NSF, makes possible fundamental innovations, fundamental discoveries, but also enables the ecosystem of support that then allows those ideas then to further prosper and realize these unbelievable outcomes that you see, whether it is companies, whether it is solving a water problem, okay, whether it is fueling further basic research, whatever that might be, all of that is important. But Taarini, I want to say one thing very clearly, and I'm sure you probably are going to ask me this question anyway. At the end of the day, what NSF makes possible the best is inspiring minds like you, making possible talent, making possible unbelievable talent everywhere. How do you inspire, motivate, nurture, and bring to life the amazing talent everywhere across the nation? NSF has got a unique position because we are in all 50 states, both rural and urban, because we support universities, community colleges, K-12 systems, and other places everywhere in terms of research. So which means that we are making possible talent everywhere. That's the most important thing, because talent being everywhere and ideas are everywhere, we know that. Then if that is the case, then if our agency makes possible bringing those to light, can be immensely powerful for every person who's endowed with the talent. But most importantly, that then brings together amazing innovations across the nation, and therefore keeps America in the vanguard of innovation and competitiveness.
Absolutely. Very well said. Speaking about inspiring the youth, what advice would you give to high school students who aspire to do deep science research in the United States?
Absolutely. I mean, the way I would say it is, every one of you has got unbelievable talent and ideas. Okay? Every one of you is possessed with that. Therefore, make sure that you take every opportunity to find mechanisms by which you can express the talent. If it means finding a mentor in a teacher or a family member or a friend or a community member, whoever that might be, find that person that can further inspire you and take that unbelievable talent and ideas that you have got and bring that to fruition. And there are many, many people across this nation who would be only too glad to take amazing talent like you, Taarini, and to see how to help nurture the talent and make the talent shine for the benefit of the nation. And therefore, in turn, ensure that that individual is also receiving all of the benefits of the hard work that they have put in to be able to bring out the talent in real terms. And so that's what I would say. Never give up, work hard, be focused, stay focused, always look for that inspiration that you can always find around you and see how you can use that inspiration to further advance your ideas and talent. And make sure that you're constantly challenging the people in your environment so that they might then challenge you in turn. And that becomes an unbelievable ecosystem of growing talent, growing yourself, getting the amazing knowledge that is available for everyone. I've said this many, many times. Talent ideas are democratized. They are everywhere across the nation and for everyone. Therefore, it is upon us to see how we can take that, as much as it is upon society, it's upon agencies like NSF to make sure that we provide the opportunities to make that happen. It's also upon the individuals. You talked about the kids in the school, that every one of you should feel it's as much your responsibility as it is the responsibility of the schools, the environment that you are in, everywhere. And it takes all of that in order to be able to realize your dreams.
I think that is great advice and encouragement for every high school student in all 50 states of America.
Yes.
Honestly, that's amazing. And it's great to see that NSF cares about the youth and inspiring the youth to pursue hard sciences and research. So just another question. I saw that you have announced $100 million for advancing equity in science and engineering. Could you please describe who the potential beneficiaries will be?
Absolutely. So one of the things, this goes back to the previous response I gave you, Taarini. I'm firmly convinced, as I said, I'll repeat this again, talent and ideas are everywhere. Okay. If that is true, then talent transcends socioeconomic demographic. Talent transcends, geographies. Talent transcends every possible thing that we might think is all across this nation, right? In terms of different constituencies, different regions, from a geographical perspective, from a socioeconomic demographic perspective, whether it is race or gender or all those different things that make up the greatness of this nation. What you want to do is to be able to provide opportunities for everyone everywhere. Okay, so when we talk about equity, that means that making access to the enablement of talent and ideas everywhere. And therefore, this investment is going to be focused on in places typically where you find that we need more fuel that needs to be added to the engine, right? And that would be places like, minority serving institutions, as an example, right? Whether it is historically black colleges and universities, or Hispanic serving institutions, or Native American colleges and institutions. And so what we want to do is to make sure that, our STEM workforce of the future is at least double in terms of more females in STEM. Okay, at least. Okay, over the next 5 to 10 years, we have to double it. Okay, we have to triple the number of African Americans and Hispanic and Latino students. We have to quadruple the number of Pacific Islander and Native American talent. Okay, all of these are at least a minimum. I'm talking about we should do a lot more than that. How might you then make that possible? We should have a lot more of students inspired in every rural part of our great nation, as much as urban part. In the urban part, there are certain areas that require more investment and emphasis to make sure that you're bringing out the talent, so that only certain urban areas are not the places where you find that you can get talent nurtured. So we have to make sure that this equity investments are focused, in areas where we need further strengthening and further enablement of talent and ideas. And that's what NSF is focused on. So we are learning a lot. In fact, you asked about COVID. Last year when COVID hit, one of the things that I have done is I asked the agency to look at where are the people most affected. Clearly, women have been a lot more affected because they're taking care of their children, they're taking care of families. Of course, there are also men and others who are also doing the same too. But the point that we should not forget is we should never leave anybody behind because of the fact that they have been, disproportionately affected. So I said to the agency that we need to take disproportionately affected individuals and disproportionately affected institutions and focus and make sure that we're giving the support that is necessary so that nobody gets left behind because of the pandemic. I also said that we need to do this at these critical points, right? Where an undergraduate student, okay, who's engaged in a research project, had a disruption to that project. How might we help them? A graduate student had a disruption to that project. A PhD student was about to graduate, need a year more because now they're yet to finish their project. How do we help them? How do we help postdoctoral fellows who are trying to get into the workforce? How do we get young faculty members who have just come into the academic environment? How do we help them even more? How do we help mid-career faculty members? So at every demographic, I call them transition points. So everybody who's in a transition point that needs help, we need to help them. So disproportionately affected individuals, disproportionately affected institutions at transition points, all of them need to be invested in. I'm grateful because, we had carved out from our budget, a significant amount of resources to be able to direct to this. But I'm grateful to the Biden-Harris administration for their investments, the American Rescue Plan, as well as the Congress. That's one of the things that I'm so delighted. The tremendous support of the administration, the tremendous support, bipartisan support that we have both in the House and the Senate is making possible all of these unbelievable things that we can do at this important time to be able to help and support the people that need the help at this time, right? So this again goes back to when we talk about equity, we need to take every moment and assess how are we doing, right? It cannot be a theoretical conversation. It's got to be a practical investment in people's ideas and talent, as I said earlier, so that we might take this moment and make it even better than when we got into this moment. And I know it's hard to imagine that, but that's what makes us who we are in the United States. We take every challenge and see what opportunities there can be for us to out-innovate ourselves. I always say our best competition is ourselves, right? And how can we be more excellent than we have ever been? Right? That is the best competition. Clearly, the global competition is a huge motivator these days. That's true. But I always say that on the other side, it is also motivating us to be more innovative, to be more inclusive of all talent everywhere. And so I've talked about geography of innovation everywhere, because it cannot be that, as important as it is, that, we want California and the Northeast and Texas and all other states that are doing so well to further do even better. But we also need to make sure all the other states where there is promise and potential are also unleashing regional economies of innovation. So NSF is going to be increasingly focused on making sure that regional innovation engines are everywhere around topical areas that makes the most, appropriate sense for that particular region. I mean, any region can do any, part of the innovative set of things that we can do as a nation. But you can take advantage of, for example, if you are living in a place like Kansas or Nebraska or Indiana or Illinois, you could imagine, and Iowa, you could imagine that would probably be the best live-in laboratory for the future of agriculture innovation. It doesn't have to be the only place, but it can really be a huge force in terms of advancing the future of smart agriculture and innovations around agriculture, as an example. So there are many, many regional engines of innovation that we need to make possible all across the nation, isn't it? Because if you believe fundamentally that ideas and talent are everywhere, then regional innovation engines can be everywhere. We need to make that possible. The catalyzation of that is important. And that's where I think agencies like NSF can be a huge asset in terms of unleashing those possibilities across the nation. And so we are going to be focused on that. And as I said earlier, we're very grateful for the bipartisan support in Congress, as well as a tremendous support in the administration in order to make these things possible. And so we're looking forward to an amazing future that we as a nation, I think, we will see in the very near future. And that, NSF will be part of that. Making that possible is truly a privilege, and we are really excited by that.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. It's great to see that NSF, the administration, Congress, and everyone just thinks it's important to help support these oft-hidden, marginalized, and disproportionately affected groups of people. And it's great that you see potential in these people and are helping them by providing resources and funding. It's honestly very commendable.